My blood turned to ice when Margaret Hale leaned across the table and called me street garbage. The word landed clean and sharp, like she had practiced it. The room went quiet in that expensive way. No gasps, no protests, just the soft scrape of silverware stopping mid-motion. 60 people froze in their seats. Investors, senators, hedge fund partners, people who made decisions with other people's lives before dessert. Margaret didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Power never does. Across from me, Julian stared down at his steak like it had personally betrayed him. He kept cutting, slow and careful, as if precision might save him from choosing a side. The table waited. So did she. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Not embarrassment, clarity. This wasn't a slip. This was theater. My name is Claire. I am 34 years old. The thought arrived fully formed as my fingers tightened around the stem of my glass. Steady enough that no one could accuse me of shaking. I had built companies, buried projects, signed agreements that moved markets. And somehow I was standing here while a woman who had inherited everything decided I was small. I smiled. Not wide, just enough. The wine tasted wrong. Sour. I swallowed anyway and let my hand drop to my phone beneath the table. The email was already written. Subject line short, attachment clean. I pressed send and placed the phone face down beside my plate. Margaret was still talking, enjoying the silence she'd purchased, halfway through a sentence about standards. Her phone buzzed, once. Loud enough, she glanced at it, annoyed, then curious. The color drained from her face as she read. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. I stood. Enjoy your birthday. I said, calm, even. I just withdrew the license to the core algorithm. Effective immediately. A few people laughed. The way they do when they think something is a joke they don't understand yet. Margaret didn't laugh. I picked up my coat. Julian finally looked up, mouth opening, then closing again. Too late. Whatever he planned to say would have been for him. Not me. In the final stretch of the evening. As the murmurs started to swell, a quiet note deserves mention. This story is a work of fiction created by our writing team, shaped from imagined events and characters. I walked past the table without waiting for permission. Past the portraits and the polite smiles cracking at the edges, feeling something irreversible settle into place. If the table had decided I didn't belong, what exactly had I just taken from them? Julian caught up to me halfway down the drive. Breath uneven. Jacket still buttoned like he expected the night to rewind. Claire, wait. The word wait came out thin, stretched by panic. Not guilt. I stopped. Not for him, for myself. I needed to hear which version of him had followed me outside. Fix this, he said. You don't understand what you just did. The plea wasn't for me. It was for the house behind us. For the name carved into the stone gate. I told him the license was gone. I told him it couldn't be put back. He rubbed his hands together, eyes darting. Already doing math that didn't include me. My family's legacy, your family's debt. I cut in. The words landed heavier than I expected. His shoulders dropped a fraction. He swallowed. They're drowning. The board gave us one window. One. Us. He still said it like that. The truth slipped out because it had to. Because the plan required it. It was my idea. He admitted. The dinner? The comment. He winced. Then rushed on. Public pressure works. You were supposed to fold. Sign the transfer. Permanent. We'd make it right after. After what? After the company survived. After his mother kept her chair, I felt something detach cleanly inside my chest. Love doesn't shatter. It loosens. How long? I asked. Did you think I'd keep pretending I didn't see the knife in your hand? He stepped closer, voice dropping. It wasn't personal. It was strategy. That was the moment it all aligned, the silence at the table. The confidence in Margaret's smile. The way he never once looked surprised. He hadn't frozen. He'd been waiting for me to break. If the man sharing my bed was a part of the plan, how many others were playing me too? I took my phone out again. Not to threaten, to check confirmations. More were coming in. Julian saw the screen and reached for my wrist. I pulled back. Go inside. I said, they'll need you. He hesitated, then turned, already choosing survival over apology. I walked to my car, knowing the damage had started and the debt collectors would soon realize who owned the silence. Marcus Reed didn't call. He sent a calendar invite. No greeting. No explanation. Just a time. A secure line. And a subject that read, urgent alignment. I joined exactly on the minute. His face appeared. Already composed. Already sure this conversation belonged to him. You made a bold move last night. Not admiration. Assessment. I waited. He shared his screen. Spreadsheets. Internal transfers. Dates highlighted in red. Margaret's signature appeared more than once where it shouldn't have. She's been moving money. He said, small amounts? Often. Enough to keep the lights on without triggering alarms. A pause. It's illegal. Justice. Delivered calmly, like a service. You're bringing this to me because I asked. Because you're the variable she didn't account for. He leaned back. With your algorithm pulled, the board is looking for an explanation. I can give them one. But timing matters. There it was. Not concern. Opportunity. He talked about cleaning house, about stability, about the company needing a steady hand after Margaret fell. He never said the word CEO, but it hung between us anyway. I nodded in the right places, asked the right questions, let him believe I was listening instead of measuring. If he was willing to sell out his own chair so smoothly, what did that make me in his plan? I'll need assurances. I said, protection, autonomy. Of course. He smiled. We're on the same side. I sent over a draft agreement while he watched. He skimmed it, satisfied. His focus stayed on the top line. Titles. Timing. He didn't notice the clause buried near the end. Quiet. Narrow. Written to shield exactly one person. Me. Marcus thought he was offering me a crown. I knew he was handing me a mask. We ended the call with mutual confidence. The dangerous kind that comes from thinking you've already won. When the screen went dark, my inbox filled with responses. The board was restless. Margaret was silent. I saved the agreement and waited, letting Marcus enjoy the illusion that he had just recruited a weapon instead of becoming one himself. Margaret broke her silence with a press release. Not an apology, not a concession, a victory lap. By noon, every internal channel lit up with the same headline, Hale Industries unveils proprietary alternative. Phones buzzed. Traders cheered. The stock climbed back to where it had been before I pulled the license. Then a little higher, like confidence itself could be traded. In the hallway outside the executive floor, conversation stopped when I passed. Someone laughed behind me. Another voice followed, low and satisfied. Guess we didn't need her after all. An invite hit my calendar. Mandatory, compliance review, no names attached. Just a room and a time. Inside, the questions came fast and clean. Access logs, email chains. Who had touched what? When? I answered without filling the silence. The chair at the end of the table stayed empty. Margaret didn't attend. She didn't have to. Later, during the internal demo, I watched the screen like everyone else. The product looked polished, familiar. Too familiar. I recognized the architecture immediately. A version I had shelved months ago. A prototype I had marked "Do not deploy in plain language" because it failed under edge conditions. Because it tripped a federal safety threshold the moment it scaled. Because it was fast and wrong. Applause filled the room. Someone clapped too hard. What happens when arrogance ships a product that was never meant to leave the lab? I kept my face neutral. Let the questions pass me by. Let the engineers sell confidence they hadn't tested. Silence was part of the design now. After the demo, an email landed from compliance. Tone clipped, deadline tight. Another followed from legal, asking for documentation I knew they didn't have. Outside the glass, a junior engineer stared at the floor, hands shaking, already understanding the math. Margaret had survived the blow. The market believed it. I closed my laptop and sent one message to myself, a date circled, a reminder set. The trap didn't need a push. It needed time. The badge reader flashed red on the first try. I tried again. Same result. The guard didn't meet my eyes when he stepped closer. He didn't have to touch me. The space he took was enough. An email arrived while I stood there. Short, cold, effective immediately. Another followed before I could lock my screen. Access revoked, then another. Accounts restricted pending review. They walked me out anyway. In the lobby. Julian was waiting. No jacket, no smile. He looked like someone who had practiced relief and landed on fear instead. We can still fix this. His hand hovered near my elbow, not touching. You went too far, but it's not over. I asked him what he wanted. He didn't hesitate. Marriage. Quiet. The code. He framed it like mercy. Like I should be grateful the offer still existed. He talked about protection, about starting over, about how this could all disappear if I stopped fighting. I let him talk. Let him believe the ground under me had finally given way. What happens after I hand it over? The question came out flat. You'll be safe. He said, we'll be safe. Safe meant silent. Safe meant owned. I opened my bag and took out the drive. Small, ordinary. I placed it in his palm and closed his fingers around it. His shoulders loosened. He thought this was the moment he'd earned. He thought I was finished. What kind of man accepts victory when it's handed to him by someone he betrayed? He nodded once, already planning how to explain this win to his mother. I watched him turn, watched the drive disappear into his pocket. As he walked away, my phone buzzed with a single confirmation. No names. No celebration. Just a green check where it mattered. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. The horse was already inside the gate. The boardroom doors closed without ceremony. Marcus sat at the head of the table, posture relaxed. Already wearing the outcome, a folder lay open in front of him. Papers aligned with the confidence of someone who believed the room would follow his lead. Margaret took the seat to his right. Expression controlled. Chin lifted like the title still belonged to her. I walked in last. A few heads turned. One sharp inhale. No one asked why I was there. Marcus started. Numbers. Violations. A timeline that pointed cleanly at Margaret and nowhere else. He spoke about duty, about stability, about the need for decisive action. He slid the vote across the table like a gift. I waited until the last sentence settled. Before you vote, I said, stepping forward, there's one item missing. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Marcus didn't look at me. He smiled. You're not on the agenda. I'm on the balance sheet. Silence pressed in. I set a single document on the table and turned it so they could read. Not ownership, not shares. Debt. Every line item that had kept the lights on during the rebound. Each one traced back to the same fund. Mine. During the chaos when the stock climbed and everyone rushed to celebrate, I had been buying quietly. Obligations. Notes. Promises nobody expected to be called. Marcus finally looked up. The color left his face as he understood the math. What's worse than being fired or being owned? Margaret stood slow and furious, but the room didn't move with her. The chair she'd ruled from was already empty. I'm not removing you, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm calling in what you owe. No vote followed. There didn't need to be one. Marcus tried to speak. I raised a hand. He stopped. The crown he'd imagined slid off without a sound. Margaret's phone buzzed. Then another. Then another. She didn't read them. She didn't have to. I turned toward the door, the papers still on the table. The decision already made. Behind me. The room shifted into damage control. Ownership changes everything. And I had just changed who everyone answered to. Margaret waited in the glass conference room like the walls still belonged to her. She didn't sit at first. She paced, heel to heel, stopping only when I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The city hummed outside the glass, indifferent. This ends now, she said, voice sharp. Name your number. I took the chair at the head of the table and folded my hands. She noticed. The pacing stopped. You don't get to do this, she tried again. I built this company. You leveraged it. I corrected. Poorly. Her mouth tightened. Bargaining came next. Board seats. A public apology. A private one. She moved through them quickly, like items on a checklist she'd never had to use before. I slid a tablet across the table. One screen. One line highlighted. Julian's name. Her eyes flicked once, then twice. That's a mistake, she said. Too fast. He's family. He's expendable. I replied, so are his assets. Frozen as of this morning, the threat finally surfaced. Legal action? Influence? Names that used to carry weight. She leaned in, close enough for me to smell her perfume. The same one she wore at the dinner. If power can be bought, what does legacy really mean? She read my face and found nothing to push against. I stood. She didn't. You called me trash because you thought blood made you untouchable. I said, trash survives. Empires rot. Her knees buckled. Not all the way. Just enough. She reached for the table and missed. I turned the tablet back toward myself and tapped once. The door opened from the outside. 2 people stepped in, already avoiding her eyes. As they let her out, she said my name like it was a warning. I didn't answer. Through the glass, I watched the hallway absorb her. The chair across from me stayed empty. I picked up my phone and sent one message. Next agenda item. Marcus arrived early and took the center seat without asking. He straightened the folder in front of him. Careful. Ceremonial. The room followed his lead out of habit. Old instincts die slowly. Congratulations. He started, smiling like the word was already his. We can move fast if we stay unified. I didn't sit. I connected my tablet to the screen. The clause appeared first, buried, clean. His eyes skimmed past it, then snapped back when the room shifted. That's boilerplate, he said. Too quickly. Standard indemnity. Read the last line, I replied. He did. His smile thinned. The air changed. The door opened. Compliance stepped in. Folders already labeled. Not dramatic. Efficient. They didn't look at him when they spoke. Unauthorized disclosures. Side agreements. A consulting arrangement paid through a shell he forgot to hide once the stock rebounded. Small violations, stacked carefully. Marcus stood. This is retaliation. The chair across from him stayed empty. I let the silence do the work. The board watched his hands as they curled into fists, then opened again. He tried to laugh it off, then tried anger when laughter failed. You used me, he said. Turning to me now, I nodded once. You volunteered. What happens when every man who wanted power is suddenly unnecessary? The vote didn't take long. Not because they agreed with me, because the risk was now his. He gathered his papers, slower than he'd arrived, and stopped at the door like someone waiting for permission that wasn't coming. As he left, another message landed on my phone. Margaret's exit finalized, assets reclassified, titles erased. The board looked to me. I didn't take the seat. Next, I said, the throne was gone. That was the point. Julian waited outside my office, hands empty, shoulders drawn in like the hallway might judge him. He didn't start with anger. He started with history. Memories placed carefully, like coins he hoped still carried value. I let them fall to the floor between us. They took everything. He said, no drama, just fact. The accounts, the board seat, my name. I nodded once. The door behind me stayed open. I wasn't inviting him in. He tried again, softer. I didn't think it would end like this. It never does for the person who expects to land on their feet. What do you want? I asked. His eyes lifted then, wet and stubborn. Another chance. Silence pressed in, not heavy, clean. You didn't lose me when you betrayed me? I said. You lost me when you thought I'd still choose you. He flinched, like the sentence had found something exposed. He stepped closer, then stopped himself. The space mattered. Is walking away the cruelest ending of all? I loved you, he said, as if that should change the math. I know, I replied. That's why this is over. He looked past me, into the office he would never enter, at the people moving with purpose that no longer included him. He nodded, once, as if accepting terms he couldn't negotiate. When he turned to leave, I didn't watch him go. I checked my phone instead. Another notification. Another confirmation. There was still work to do. I closed the door and moved forward, already planning the next meeting, the next decision, the next pressure point that would make Chapter 10 inevitable. They say revenge makes you just like them. I disagreed. The room was the same one where Margaret had celebrated herself. Right down to the chairs, no one ever moved. Different faces filled them now. Engineers who used to speak only when invited. Legal who watched instead of nodded. No one waited for permission to breathe. I took the seat she once guarded. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like responsibility. We're done. I said, letting the words land without decoration. Hale Industries is dissolved effective today. A murmur rolled and settled. No outrage, no applause. The decision had already reached them through contracts and calendars. The papers moved, assets split cleanly, teams reassigned, the technology redistributed into new companies led by the people who built it and were never credited for it. No speeches, no ceremonies, just signatures and quiet relief. Someone asked if I wanted to rename the holding entity. No, I said. There won't be one. I watched the realization travel around the table. Not confusion, understanding. The structure they feared was gone. The seat no longer mattered. When it ended, people stood on their own. They spoke to each other without looking to me first. That was the point. Later, alone for a moment, I touched the edge of the table and pulled my hand back. It didn't deserve sentiment. Here's the lesson I earned the hard way. Self-respect starts when you stop negotiating your value with people who benefit from lowering it. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're decisions. I didn't take her seat at the table. I destroyed the table so no one like her could ever own it again. If you stayed with me through this, thank you. I know stories like this can hit close to home. Share your thoughts if you want. I read them. And if you want more stories about choosing yourself and holding the line, stay with me. I'm not done yet.